So my name is Rajat Sadana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your co-host today. Along with me, I have Payal Tandon, who is the other co-founder of e-GMAT, and she's going to be our main host today. Supporting us in this webinar, we have Ashutosh Mishra, who's the subject matter expert, as well as Sandeep, who's the GMAT strategy expert. In this webinar, we look at a unified approach to solving the easiest to the most challenging questions. This is a fairly progressive webinar, which means we start with the core foundation in prime numbers and LCM GCD, and then progressively increase the difficulty level. As we do that, we use the same core concepts that we apply, but we enhance the extent of application that we put in, or the intensity with which we apply those concepts. And what happens when we do that is you're going to really see how you make mistakes, why you make mistakes, and if there are any specific kinds of questions where you make mistake, we're going to expose those kinds of questions to you. And to make sure that you're able to apply, or you have to make sure that you have the right foundation to be able to apply, we did send a few video lessons your way. The 2 video lessons that we sent your way were those on primes. Also, there were a few video lessons on even odd that we sent your way. If you have not gone through these lessons, I would recommend that you go through them in the free trial. Just log into your e-GMAT account and go to the Quant module. Also, we have some upcoming free webinars. We have a free webinar on how to ace GMAT reading comprehension. That's next Saturday on 6th of April at 7 a.m. Pacific. In this webinar, we look at a few reading strategies which, if you follow, will allow you to improve your comprehension or take your comprehension to that next level. Now, once that happens, acing GMAT reading comprehension becomes extremely simple. Then we have a proctored mock test that we call as a Quant Workshop, which is next Sunday. Again, in this mock test, it's actually a 2-stage mock test in which we give you an estimate of where you stand today. But beyond that, we also tell you how do you create a study plan to go from your current score to that next score. So if you're someone who's at Q46, we'll tell you how do you go from a Q46 to a Q49, which are the areas that you should focus on, how much time should you budget for that. If you're at a Q44, we'll tell you how do you go from a Q44 to first a Q47, then a Q49, Q50, etc. Again, that workshop is on Sunday, 7th of April. This is a free webinar. It's quite heavily attended, and to make sure that we do justice to the students in this webinar, we ask this one leading question, which is, when do you plan to take the test? Based on the data that I have so far, what I really see is that essentially we have 4 more or less similarly sized groups, with the biggest group being those who have between 46 to 75 days before their test. We also have a few folks, or quite a few folks, who have their exam right away, and then we have a few folks who haven't taken the date as of yet. But essentially, the nice thing about this group is that we have a few people in every segment over here. With that, let me go right into the webinar pane. The screen, for many of you, the screen will be in the process of changing. For some of you, the screen will have changed already. I'll give you guys another 10 seconds so that the presentation does settle down at your end. All right. There's essentially 3 parts of this webinar. In the first part, I'm going to do a brief introduction to e-GMAT. That's going to last about 15 minutes or so. In the second part, Payal would take over and should focus on that unified approach, to answering number properties question. And then in the third part, if you have any questions that have not been responded to, we'll have an open-ended Q&A to address any of those questions. With that, let's go right into the first part of this webinar, which is an introduction to e-GMAT. So let's get to know you guys slightly better as well. We didn't ask this question up front, which is what's your target? All right, based on the data that I have so far, what I really see is about 50% of you are aiming for a score of 730 or higher. There's a good 36% of you in the 710, 720 bracket. And then about, I'd say about 14%, 14 and a half odd percent of you, or as the number is now changed to about 17%, who are in that 600 to 700 bucket. So while about 50% of you are aiming for a score of 730 or higher, what I can barely say statistically is only 6% of the people get to a score of 720 or higher. And this is despite the fact that median scores at top business schools have been going up for a few years. In the year 2018, they went up even more. Now, what is it that people who get to these scores to get to a 730 or higher score do? A good percentage of them do use e-GMAT. Why do I say that? If you look at the data on leading forums, which is the number of verified reviews or the number of success stories over the last 12 months, what you're going to find is that there have been more verified reviews for e-GMAT than have been for all the other major test prep companies put together. Similarly, when you look at the number of success stories posted over the last 12 months, more success stories mention e-GMAT than do mention all of the other prep companies combined. And again, this is over the last 12 months. And you can go take a look at GMAT Club Share GMAT Experience Forum and filter by the tag e-GMAT overall. So what makes our students more successful, other than the course content, other than the fact that we focus so much on application of this, one thing that adds to the success of our students, which no one else has, is the architecture of our learning, or how we approach your overall GMAT preparation. And to understand how the architecture of the learning that we offer is different, let's kind of look at the learning architectures that exist today. There are two dominant architectures that exist today. One is what we call as the book-based architecture, and the other is a private tutoring-based architecture. So when you look at a number of the prep courses out there, what you're going to find is, yes, they do offer audiovisual instruction. Yes, they do offer support, but their core architecture, their principle of course design is built on this book-based approach. Whereas when you evaluate the way we have architected our technology platform, our courses, the way we collect and give you feedback, what you're going to find is that e-GMAT's built a lot more around this private tutoring-based architecture. And to really see why that makes a difference, why one architecture makes a student more successful than the other, let's kind of look at how you go about acing the GMAT in an efficient manner. So let's say we take an example of someone who wants to go from a 600 to a 720 score. So if you want to do that, there are a few steps that you need to follow. The first thing is you need to visualize how you're going to get to that 720 score. What milestones are you going to hit so that you can get to that score efficiently? Then you need to learn the concepts that you need to learn. For example, in this webinar, we did send a few concepts your way. Then we need to really know how to apply the concepts, because merely knowing the concepts isn't enough. You should be able to apply it on easy, medium, and hard problems that the test is going to throw at you. And you need to get so good at applying those concepts that you attain a level of mastery that puts you in that top 6 percentile or in that 730 or higher bracket. So let's see how the book-based architecture attacks this problem. So a book-based architecture is all about autonomy. When you start studying using books, you get a few study plans. Now, none of these study plans personalized to you. You may get a quant focus or a verbal focus study plan, but essentially the extent to which it applies to you and whether it's something that would work for you is something that you decide. But essentially, you take a study plan and start studying using that. Then you learn concepts as you study chapters in books, and there are a number of books that are good sources of learning concepts. The problem arises when you have to make a decision whether you've learned a concept well enough or not. Why? Because books don't give feedback. The onus of validation or the burden of validation is completely on you. So after reading a chapter, if you feel you're comfortable enough, you move forward. If you don't feel comfortable enough, many students still move forward. Some of them would go back and revise the concepts from the book. One area where books falter and they don't do as great a job is teaching you how to apply those concepts, because just the inherent static nature of the book is not very well suited to telling you what you do in step one, what you do in step two, what you do in step three, and so on and so forth, and pointing out problems over there. As a result, people who study using books, for them, the way to master application is to solve hundreds and hundreds of problems, and only the best and the brightest who solve these many problems are able to master application. Now, to evaluate whether you are among those top 6 percentile of students or not, again, people who study using books, they take a ton of mock tests. Now, they do give you a decent estimate. There are a good number of let's say, quality mock tests out there, but then the burden of evaluation is completely on you. As to, once you take a mock test, you get a certain score, you still need to make a decision as to what do you do next. So what are the key differences? A private tutoring based approach works slightly differently. When you work with a good private tutor, the first thing the good private tutor would do is he'll assess you and create a study plan that's personalized to your strengths and weaknesses. So you'd really get a set of milestones that you need to hit. You'd really get how much time you need to spend to hit those milestones. And when you do that, you actually get that shortest path to hitting that 720 or higher score. Then a private tutor would teach you concepts and will give you feedback as you're learning those concepts and focus on areas where you need more emphasis. One area where working with a private tutor benefits you the most is learning how to apply those concepts. A private tutor would tell you how to attack a problem. What do you do in step 1, step 2, and step 3? A private tutor would also give you feedback that's highly personalized to you. When you falter in a question, he will tell you why you faltered, what is it that you ignored, and what should you do if you face a similar problem in the future. And while you're solving problems, a private tutor would constantly evaluate your extent of mastery and then give you feedback on essentially the key areas that you still need to work on. If you've improved well enough, the private tutor will tell you when do you move from one topic to the other. So what's the difference between these two architectures? While you're learning the same content, of course, both these approaches are helping you ace the GMAT. A private tutor-based approach is a lot more personalized, starting from the study plans to the feedback, and the focus on learning is on areas where you'd benefit the most from. So let's see, why is it that we say that most of these other prep companies are built on that book-based architecture, whereas e-GMAT's built around that private tutoring-based architecture. And again, we'll take an example of a student who's going from a score of 600 to a 720. We'll start with building those study plans. To help you build the study plan, we've created a utility called GMAT Planner. It's an AI-driven utility which includes 3 neural networks, a rule-based engine, and prediction based on data from about 35,000 students. Now, what this utility does is it allows everyone to build their personalized study plan. How does it work? It basically starts with taking your current quant and verbal score. So when you say you are at a 600, how are you at a 600? And because there's intelligence built into this utility, it understands when you input certain scores. So let's say you are at a Q44 and a V28. It understands that a Q44, even though it's 50 percentile, which is very similar to your verbal score, implies that you know a lot more in quant than what you know in verbal. So it then, when you want to get to a 720 or higher score, it then really looks at and improves your quant to a good level before it starts improving your verbal. So the recommendation that it gives you is a Q50 and a V38. Now, this is an excellent recommendation, but for a few of you who may not like this, you can actually change this. And the beauty of this is, if you do choose to say, I want to get to a Q48, not a Q50, it automatically calculates the corresponding verbal score so that you still hit that 720 score. But now you have these milestones of a Q50 and a V38. You still need to figure out, okay, how would I get to a Q50? How would I get to a V38? How much time should I spend on various aspects of quant and verbal to get there? And it gives you just that. Based on your current arithmetic and algebra abilities, it gives you a target arithmetic and algebra ability. Also, it gives you target abilities in various subsections and verbal. Again, this is one of the many combinations that lead to a V38 or a Q50, and you can customize that as well. So when that happens, your GMAT journey is from these starting abilities over here in Quant to these target abilities in Quant, and these starting abilities in verbal on the bottom left hand corner to these target abilities in verbal. So you want to go from a 50 percentile in SC to an 89 percentile in SC, a 49 percentile in CR to an 84 percentile, and so on and so forth. So these are 5 neat journeys. The next thing that you need to decide is, okay, what sequence am I going to study this? How much time should I spend on each subsection? And based on the amount of effort that you're willing to put in on a day-to-day basis, weekdays or weekends, it calculates that. And this particular student in this case, which is kind of a baseline cases, wants to put in about 20 hours per week, including weekends. And essentially, you can really see for him, he needs to spend about 1.4 weeks in arithmetic, about 2.5 weeks in algebra, and so on and so forth. But essentially, when this happens, you can really visualize your preparation. You can really look at the areas of your focus. You don't divert while preparing. You know that for the first 10 days or so, you're going to focus, or 11 days, you're going to focus just on arithmetic. For the next 2.5 weeks, you're going to focus just on algebra, and so on and so forth. Why is this important? Because it tells you these milestones. In fact, a number of students who actually go through this, we have about 2,000 students who've gone through this utility. We just released it towards the end of February. They actually put these milestones. They take a printout and put it over there. To what extent does it personalize? It can take in the number of hours per day you're going to study on an average, on the weekdays and weekends, and when would you start studying, and so on and so forth, and give you a calendar view like this. So why did we go about doing this? Because it did take a lot of effort to build this plan, so that we'd spent this effort so that everyone over here can create a study plan in 7 minutes or fewer. For those of you who work with a private tutor, what you would realize is even private tutors don't give you this precise study plan. Let's talk about learning concepts. A good private tutor teaches you concepts and gives you feedback on the areas that you still need to work on. The e-GMAT course architecture is built just like that. This is our divisibility and remainders module. This is one of the 11 modules in our number properties course. What you really see is that you have specific concepts that teach you the things that you need to know in divisibility and remainders. And these concepts are really audio-visual in nature. Now, when you compare this to a popular course by Magoosh, what you find is that A, it's not as comprehensive. This is all the stuff which is there in divisibility. And B, there's very little application out there. And to understand that a bit more, let's kind of go inside these concepts a bit more. On the next slide, you're going to see the e-GMAT divisibility concept and or remainders concept, I'm sorry. And what you really see is it's fairly audio-visual. You have animations over there. So all of this information appears at the right time, beautifully synced with high definition audio. There's a detailed video solution for every concept. And then you have practice questions, which are right then and there, post every concept. So that you learn a concept, you're able to apply this right then and there. And if you falter, it tells you where you're faltering, why you're faltering. Now compare this to the learning on the Magoosh course, and what you're going to find is it's very text heavy. There's very little interactivity. Essentially, this is a book which is given to you in an audio-visual format. Next part is learning how to apply, or teaching you how to apply concepts, because essentially just knowing concepts isn't as useful. In the e-GMAT course, we have these entities called application files. They they focus on teaching you how to apply concepts just like a private tutor would do. They tell you what you do in step one, what you do in step two, so on and so forth. And then once you learn how to apply those concepts, you actually get very specific practice quizzes over here as well. So in divisibility practice quizzes and remainder practice quizzes over here. And then towards the end, to make sure that you learn that application, we give you a set of targeted official guide questions with detailed video solutions. And this is how every quant and verbal module in the e-GMAT course is architected. Now let's look at the application in the Magoosh course. You don't have any application files. There's just this one quiz towards the end. And the reason for that is because the intent is not to teach you how to apply concepts. The intent is just to give you practice. And this practice is common not just for divisibility, but also for prime factorization for LCM, GCD, and even in NOD, and so on and so forth. Now, why is this specific feedback important? Why is learning application important? Because you're not studying algebra for the love of it. You're studying algebra to get to that 79th or 80th percentile or so. The next piece is evaluation of mastery. Remember, a private tutor, while teaching the application, evaluates you and really tells you when it's time for you to move to that next level. To do that at an algebra level or a number properties level or an advanced topics or a word problems level, we build this entity called ability quizzes in our Scholarinium platform, which every student gets with our Quant and GMAT offerings. And what you do is when you go through a particular course, such as number properties or algebra, you just go and take an ability quiz. It tells you how well you've done. So it gives you your ability score over here. It also tells you the areas that you still need to work on. So the beauty of this is if you don't hit that 80 odd percentile, you can look at the areas that you still need to work on, go revise those areas from the course and come back and take another ability quiz and track your improvement. So while, again, as I said, you learn the same content in both these approaches, you can really see how the e-GMAT course is built around that private tutoring based approach. And through the feedback, through the application that we teach you, why it leads to a lot more success. Who's created this course? Some of GMAT Club's top rated instructors have created this course. Instructors who've been reviewed a lot more frequently on GMAT Club. So while only 6% of the students get to that 720 or higher score, a good number of them do use e-GMAT. We did start our quant and verbal batches yesterday. I'm going to actually share the batch calendars over here. This is our verbal batch calendar. You can really see it's designed for working professionals. All courses, all sessions do take place on the weekend, either on a Saturday or a Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific time. The batch typically lasts about 40 days or so. This course comes with the world's best guarantee, which means, let's say you've started at a V30. If you don't improve, we guarantee a V34. So if you started a V30, we guarantee a V34. Otherwise, we refund your money. Even when you started a V37, we guarantee a V41. Otherwise, we refund your money. This is a typical quant batch. Again, we start with number properties. Yesterday was number properties 1. Today is number properties 2. And we end with a quant workshop. Again, this comes with a plus 3-point score improvement guarantee. Essentially, if you have a Q47, we guarantee a Q50. If you have a Q44, we guarantee a Q47. And this is a pure guarantee, which means that essentially, if you take the GMAT, if you have an official score, you take this course and don't improve, we give you your refund. Unlike other prep companies, we don't require that you take the course multiple times. With that, I've come to the end of the first part of the webinar. If you want to stay updated with all things e-GMAT, I'd recommend that you connect with me on my LinkedIn. There are upwards of 10,000 students who are connected with me on my LinkedIn. Also, we post about 5 articles about MBA admissions and GMAT preparation every week or so. I'm now going to invite Payal Tandon to start the second part of this webinar, which is how do you ace number properties. And as for a transition, I'm going to mute myself. So you may not hear audio for about 50 seconds or so.
Good morning, good evening, and hello everyone. My name is Payal Tandon and I will be your host for this second part of the webinar. And thank you, Rajat, for that wonderful introduction. All right, so can everyone hear me clearly? Please press yes if you can. All right, so, okay, I believe the voice, so let me get the other poll as well so that you can type in if the voice is loud and clear. Right. So for those of you who are not able to hear me clearly, can you, oh, well, they won't be able to hear. So for those of you who are able to hear me clearly, can you please type in over here as well if the voice is absolutely clear? No issues at all? Okay. Not clear, too silent. You may want to increase the volume at your end. Maybe your, yeah, so try setting up volume at your end and it might help you. Otherwise, try logging back in. All right, maybe try logging back in. That should help. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's get into the second part of this webinar. So what we're going to do over here is we are going to solve number properties questions using a very structured step-by-step process. And the whole point of doing that is that we want to give you, we want to help you understand as to what is absolutely important to solve GMAT questions and to actually ace GMAT Quant. And for that, there are two things that are absolutely essential. The first and the foremost is you need to have a very sound understanding of basics. And we are going to highlight that aspect utilizing the concept of divisibility and remainders. And the second aspect is that you need to have a very structured process to solve questions. And that aspect also you will see as we proceed through the session. Now, the learnings that you have from this session, you would be able to apply not just on this number properties topic or on these number properties topic, but you would be able to apply these across the board through all GMAT quant topics, and you'll see why as we progress through the session. So here's how the progression is going to happen. We will first solve DS questions, 700 level plus questions. And these are three questions, question 8, question 9, question 10. Now we are only going to solve these questions up front. The whole point of this is that our target is for you to score above, let's say Q49 or Q50. For you to score that high, you need to be able to solve such questions with a very high accuracy. By such questions, I mean you need to be able to solve PS and TS 700 level questions with utmost confidence and very high accuracy, which means your ability to be able to solve these difficult questions need to be really high. Now, what do you need in order for you to do that? You need to have that sound understanding of basics and you need to have a structured step-by-step process. So that is precisely what I'm going to demonstrate in this session. And for that reason, you're going to be just solving these three questions. That way, you know, your goal for this session is to be able to build your concepts and build your skills in the process so that you can solve these three questions, the type of these three questions really very confidently by the end of this session. Right. So again, that's how we'll do. So we'll solve these three questions first, then we'll go through warm-up exercises. So now we are going to go through progressively increasing the difficulty of the questions. And then we'll go through problem-solving questions here, 650 to 700 level. And then we'll solve some problem-solving questions of 700 level. And then we'll come back to these questions number 8 through 10, and we will solve them again, and we'll discuss them in detail. Okay. So as I said, as you go through this session, you will learn certain principles that you will be able to apply across the board throughout all of GMAT Quant. Okay. So let's get going with this. Now, one thing that I will tell you is that I usually do not time myself by time you guys. By that, what I mean is that I will not give you a time constraint of 2 minutes or 3 minutes to solve a question. Instead, what I'm going to do is when I show you the question, let me just show you the answer part so that you are familiar with that. So you are going to see a question poll like this. And can you all please click on still solving? I would want everyone to click on still solving because that tells me how many people are actively engaged in solving questions. Okay, sounds good. So I have about 50 responses here. Okay, good. All right, so now when I show you the question, I will see when 50% of the class has selected some answer choice. I'm going to give you, let's say, a 30-second warning for these difficult questions. Okay, so that's how we're going to do. So now here comes your question number 8. Go ahead and start solving it. All right, last 30 seconds. I'm going to end the poll now. All right. Can you please click on, let me just get that choice as well. Still solving. All right. Can you please click on still solving here? And then I'll show you the next question, question number 9. Let's get that number up to about 60. Okay, here comes your question number 9. Last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. And here comes your last question for this section. And I'm going to get you the poll as well. Actually, before that, let's just get everyone to click on still solving, please. Then I'll show you question number 10. Okay, here you go. Question number 10. All right, last 30 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so how was this experience? Let me open this up. How was this experience of solving 3 back-to-back difficult questions? Do you feel confident about your responses? Do you feel these questions were really difficult? Where do you feel you lack in? What do you feel you lack in? Not confident at all, extremely challenging, no structured approach, awesome, understanding of how to approach, tough, Q10 is terrible, okay, difficult questions. Okay, clarity, not confident. Can the questions be more difficult in the GMAT? Yeah, these are 700 level questions. Can they be more difficult? Yeah, they can be. Question 10, definitely the most difficult. Okay, yes, that is actually, uh, well, if I look at your accuracy here, they are pretty much all comparable. So you have in fact, you guys were more accurate. More people were accurate for question number 10 as compared to the other two questions. So that's the deceptive nature of DS questions. But that's okay. Again, the whole point of showing you these three questions was not to make you feel that you're not ready yet, but to make you realize as we go through the session as to what all are the important aspects that you need to keep in mind for preparing for quant. Okay, because the last thing the last thing that you'd want to do is have that overconfidence about a certain topic, and I just and you know that can be really very detrimental to your score. And more often than not, quant, for non-native especially, we feel that quant is our utmost strength, and we don't spend that much amount of time in focusing on quant, in making sure that we enhance our strengths, making sure that we capitalize on our strengths. And as you go through this session, you will realize how you can actually capitalize on your strength on focusing on the two most important things, concepts and structured process. So let's now get into the conceptual aspect of this session. This is a warm-up section in which I'll ask you some basic questions on divisibility and remainders. As you solve these questions, you will get feedback on your current conceptual knowledge, which means that you will know, okay, I know this concept well, I don't know this concept well. Okay, and that way you get that feedback and you can bridge the gaps as identified in this session. Okay, so again, I will not be discussing or I will not be teaching you these concepts in detail. I'll simply be telling you, okay, this is the concept that you need to work on if you are not able to answer those questions. Okay, all right, so now let's go into this one. Let me hide this and let's get rid of this poll as well. So give me 1 second as I set this up. So you'll see a drastic reduction in the difficulty level of questions, which is by design. Here you go. Can you click on still solving? As you can see, these questions only have 3 choices. Okay, and because these are easy questions, I am going to you're going to get much less time because you are going to be solving these questions rather quickly. Okay, so here you go. Question number 1 now. Go ahead. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So choice B is the correct answer. Let's go through the question. What the question is asking us is that Z is a 3-digit number whose digits are consecutive numbers. Select the correct statement. We need to figure out the divisibility by 3. So quite simply, divisibility rule of 3, sum of the digits should be divisible by 3. Now, when you look at the question statement, what you see is that the three digits are consecutive numbers. So you can assume that, let's say, the first digit is x, the second digit, which means would be x plus 1, the third digit would be x plus 2. And then you take their sum, and what you realize is that regardless of what the value of x is, that is, regardless of what the first digit of the number is, the sum of these digits is always going to be so this number is always going to be divisible by 3, because the sum of the digits of this number is always divisible by 3. So the correct answer over here is choice B. Now, for those of you who selected choice A, why did you select choice A? Because this is a very simple concept that you guys need to know, and you have some understanding of the concept, and that's the reason why you said it may be divisible by 3. But I'd like to understand from the 12 of you and from the 3 of you who were not able to solve this question, what happened? What were you not clear about? So your options over here are that you were not clear about this concept over here as to what the divisibility rule is, or you were not clear about how to translate this information about the consecutive numbers. So did not have the rule mastered, forgot the rule. Okay. How about the other people? There are about 12, 13, 14, 16 people who were not able to, who did not select choice B. Goofed up in the options. Okay. All right. So for my feedback to all how many did we count? 16 of you is that you always need to make sure that you need to make sure that you learn the divisibility rules. Okay. So that's the first level of feedback for all of you. Okay. Now I also noticed something, that there were certain students who selected choice B rather quickly within the first 30 seconds, and there were certain other students who took a little bit more time to process. Now, when you do take a little bit more time, it's okay, but understand which step, now that you have the two steps over here, make sure that you are doing that critical evaluation of yours to see what step did you take longer on. Okay, so that you can build that aspect, and that is something which you're going to see as a common theme across this session and across every piece of content in the e-GMAT course, that we provide you the content so that you can do that self evaluation at each and every step of the stage, so that step of the game, so that you know, okay, this is something which I guess I got it right, but this is something that I really need to focus on a bit more because I took a bit of time to get to that point. Okay, so you see that step by step solution, and that's why you're able to figure out, okay, I know this but I don't know this, or I'm very confident with this but I'm not confident with that. Okay, so let's come to question number 2 now. Here's question number 2, and I'm going to remove the, okay, but before that, can you please click on still solving? All right, here you go. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Okay, so the correct answer here is choice A, and only about 51% of the class got this question correct, which means that you all perceive this question to be hard, whereas this question is an easy question. So what this tells you as overall feedback to this class is that you have to, as a class, you need to build your ability in solving such questions. Okay. Now let me go through the step-by-step process here, and then I'm going to ask you, almost half of the students who answered this question incorrectly, I'm going to ask you which step did you falter on. Okay, so let's go through this. So divisibility rule of 4 is what? Last two digits should be divisible by 4. Very straightforward. Now, what we know over here is that z is a 4-digit number whose digits are consecutive numbers. Okay, so now if the digits are consecutive numbers, what all could be the possibilities? Now, in this case, in the previous case, how we processed the information about consecutive numbers was that we assumed x plus 1, x plus 2, x plus 3. So x plus 1, and x plus 2. Because, why did we do that? Because we needed to find the sum of the 3 digits, because that's what the divisibility rule is all about for 3. Now for 4, that even if we assume x plus 1, x plus 2, we are not going to get that, say, we won't be able to process that information any further, because the divisibility rule of 4 is only with regards to the last two digits, right? So that is all our focus should be. So for us to be able to figure that out, what we're going to do is we're going to assume a few cases. Z could be odd. Now, if z is odd, let's take an example, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, in this case, and let me get some polls, some yes/no poll here. In this case, is z divisible by 4? If I take the case of z being odd, is z divisible by 4? No, it's not. Okay. So I know that choice B is not the correct answer, right? So for those of you who selected choice B, there is your mistake. You did not consider the case in which z could be an odd number. Okay. Now, what are the other cases possible? If z, so the first case that we took was a z is odd. What other cases are possible for z? For us to evaluate all the possibilities of z, what other cases are possible? That z is even. Absolutely right. We started with z is odd. Now let's see that z is even, right? Now when z is even, there are, let's take two cases possible, right? In the first case, the last two digits may be divisible by 4. Let's take 3, 4, 5, 6. In this case, 56 is definitely divisible by 4. So now I get the answer that okay, there are certain cases in which this number in which z is divisible by 4. But at the same time, there could be some other numbers in some other cases in which z is not divisible by 4. Let's take 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 is also even, but in this case, 34 is not divisible by 4. So here we have three possibilities that cover all the entire span of the numbers that z can take. In the first case, z is not divisible by 4. In one of the cases, in the second case, z is divisible by 4. And then there is another case, in case number 2, in which z is not divisible by 4, which means that the correct answer here is choice A, z may be divisible by 4. Okay. So now tell me, for those of you who were not able to solve this question correctly, where did you falter? Wasn't sure of the rule. Okay. Read the option incorrectly. Read choice B as z is not always divisible by 4. Happened in a hurry. Okay. All right. That is fine. Fair enough. Then you can give yourself credit to this for this question. Did not consider the first case of z being even and divisible by 4. Okay. Forgot to consider about odd and even. Okay. Now, I have some other question, another question here as well. How do we ascertain if we have to consider the digits as variables or numbers? Again, it depends upon the kind of question that you have. As I was telling you, in the previous question, the divisibility rule was straightforward. That is, you need to consider the sum of digits, right? So in that case, it made sense for you to start off there, right? Now in that case, because you're taking variables, you are by design covering the entire universe of numbers, because you're assuming x to be a variable of which represents the first digit. Now, in this case, you're not taking variables, right? In this case, you know that you have to deal with the last two digits, right? So it makes sense because you're dealing with the last two digits, and because you're talking about the number 4, you know that, okay, you have to go by even odd, because, 4 is an even number. So that could be a good starting point for you. But now when you take a look at even numbers and you know that, okay, not all even numbers are divisible by 4, that's when you have to then expand the cases and consider when the last two digits are divisible by 4 and when the last two digits are not divisible by 4. Okay, so again, your approach to a question is going to uh, is going to depend on the concept, on your understanding of the concept and on your understanding of the question. Okay, so that's how you determine whether you take up variables or whether you take up certain cases. Now, this question is an easy question, but it could very well be utilized in a data sufficiency question, in a 700 level data sufficiency question. How? Because you could be given this information. Again, data sufficiency question is nothing but three sources of information provided to you. The first one is the question statement, the second one is statement 1, the third one is statement 2. Right? So now you have to figure out, given these three pieces of information, how do you solve the question? Right? So again, you are given pieces of information over here and you need to make sure that you consider all the possible cases. Okay? So now I do see certain other, there's one student who's mentioned about multiples of 100 always divisible by 4. If ABCD is 4-digit number, 2B plus C should be divisible by 4. Well, not 2B plus C because B is your third digit. So again, you can, it's up to you. You can apply, once you tweak your method a little bit, you can apply that as well. But again, I like to keep things simple, right? If something requires a whole lot of processing upfront, then I would rather not do that, because again, when you consider cases, you are considering the entire universe of the numbers, right? So you are taking care of those aspects. Okay, but again, as long as you have a structured approach, as long as you're considering all the cases, you should be good. Okay, so now let's come to question number 3 here, and I am going to, now this one has 4 choices. So let's click on still solving. All right, here you go. Question number 3. Okay, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So this one is a fairly easy question. So again, divisibility rule of 8. Last 3 digits should be divisible by 8. Now, what you see over here is that what is a number closest to this number that is a multiple of 8? So now all you have to do is divide this by 8 and see what the remainder is. It gives the remainder as 1. So the closest number that will be divisible by 8 is the one ending with 896. You essentially subtract 1 from 897 and you get the answer as 896. Okay, so relatively straightforward question. So for those of you who were not able to solve this question, you need to figure out which step did you falter. Did you not know the rule, which is a conceptual issue? Now over here, there is some more processing that's required. You need to understand the concept of remainder. So again, another conceptual issue. And then you have to do the final processing. So again, you need to be absolutely comfortable with the concepts here. Okay. So now we come to our last question in this section. No, there are two more questions here. Sorry about that. Now this one also has 4 choices. So let's clear the answers. Can you click on still solving, please? All right, here you go. Okay, last 10 seconds. I'm going to end the poll now. So the correct answer here is choice D, which about 70% of you got correct. Now, how did you guys solve this question? I'll show you the solution, but first I want to understand, how did you solve this question? Did you simply do the calculation? 207, took n as 204, pick a value, factorize 204. Okay, simple logic. Okay. Now, okay, let me broadcast the results. So a number of you took the specific case and then you solved it. Okay. Now, it is okay for you to do that. However, I would really suggest that you go in a step-by-step manner, as I explained to you here, and you're going to see why that is the case. You've already solved questions 8 through 10. And what you'll see is that this is where things start to get interesting, that if you go by first principles and you go through and you build your skill of simplification, you will realize that those skills are going to be very handy when you solve DS questions of the type 8 through 10. Okay, so let me walk you through this. So the simple concept over here is dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. Everyone knows this concept? Yes, no? Click on yes here if you know this concept really well. Good. So we're going to work on this concept. Now, if we have to apply this concept on this part of the equation, what are we going to get? What we're going to get is that n is equal to, okay, so first let's apply it here. What we have to find the remainder when n is divided by 4, which means if we apply this concept here, we get n is equal to 4p plus r. Everyone okay so far? Yes, no? Okay, good. Now we apply this concept on the given information, and we get n is equal to 204q plus 3. Okay. Now, the simple thing over here, the one thing that you have to absolutely keep in mind is that the remainder is always less than the divisor. Okay, so here our constraint is that r is less than 4. Okay, so this is something which you always have to keep in mind. Identify the constraints. Okay, that's your first skill over here, process skill. Now, what you have to find out is what is the remainder. If we need to find out the value of r, right? So now all we have to do is we need to compare these two equations here, right? On the right, on the left hand side, you have n in both the equations, and on the right hand side, you have certain other terms. So what you see is that if you are able to put 204Q in the form of 4P, you have to try that out, right? And that's what we are able to do over here. We know that 204Q can be written as 4P as shown. 204Q is equal to 4 into 51Q, right? So you have to express this term in the form of 4P over here so that the remaining terms can then give you the remainder. That is what the whole approach over here is, right? So what you are able to now see is that, okay, 204Q is just another form of 4P, which means the remainder is 3. So the answer is choice D. Okay. Now, how many of you understand this method here? So I'm not taking any numbers. I'm simply taking the concept and I'm simply applying the equation over here. Now, for those of you who don't understand that, I would really request you to put your question in the Q&A pod, because this is really the basics of this is really the simplistic form of things that we're going to discuss in this session. Or maybe I want to make sure that I address your questions here. So put your questions in the answers presenter question. What did you not understand? All we are doing is, so I'll go over this once more because this is what I build upon throughout the session. What concept do we need to learn to apply here? You need to learn to apply the concept of this equation. Dividend is equal to divisor into quotient plus remainder. How are the equations created? Okay, how are the equations created? I'm simply utilizing this concept here. Dividend is n because n is being divided. 204 is the quotient, okay, and sorry, 204 is the divisor, q is the quotient, and 3 is the remainder. So I'm simply applying this equation here. Okay, how do I get 204Q is equal to 4 into 51Q from 4P? Okay, all I'm doing is I'm comparing these two equations. So for those of you who already understand this, just bear with me for a couple of minutes because I do want to make sure that all these students who don't understand it get this concept. So bear with me for a couple of minutes for the repetition. So over here you have these two equations. You need to figure out what is the remainder when n is divided by 4. So what you need to find out is the value of r, right? That is what we need to find out. Now, how can we figure out the value of r? If you compare these two equations, your n is the same, right, on both the sides. n is on the left hand side here, n is on the left hand side here of both the equations. Now, r is a term which you need an integer value of r. And you know that, okay, 4p is, you have the first term which is 4p. Now over here also you have one term which is in terms of a variable q, right? Because you don't know as to what the value of q is. You don't know what the value of n is, right? So you're simply trying to simplify this further to see, can you express 204 in terms of 4? And sure enough, you can in this case. Now, it won't be possible in all the cases, but in this case, it is definitely possible, right? So you basically express this and you get, okay, P is equal to 51Q. If the number was something other than 204, then yes, you'll have to process that number in the form such that you can bring it in the form of 4p, or you can get something closer to that. So that's a good question. And again, we'll see, because again, depending upon the kind of number, you may not be able to solve that question as well. But in this case, this is what the question is, right? And as we process this further, as we see further forms of this question, you will be able to see how do you process the information. Okay, but for now, just understand that, okay, you have to compare the like terms together, and you have to see, can you, given the information, can you solve the question, right? Maybe the information could be such that the question was not solvable at all, right? In that case you won't even have a problem solving question. Okay, but right now this is the question that you have, and you have to make sure that you understand the process that we are utilizing here. Okay, all right, so now let's move on to our next question. So one more thing that I do want to talk about is that there are these 5 process skills that you need to build. The first, so in this question, you see the process skill of visualization. Okay, so visualization is the skill that is being applied here. Okay, So you should be able to visualize information and see, okay, 204Q, can I write it in terms of 4P? Okay. All right. Now let's solve this question. You have the number 205 here, but there are certain other numbers that have changed as well. So let me get this poll. Go ahead, solve this question now. First, please click on still solving. That way I know how many people are engaged in this question. All right, last 10 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. So choice A is the correct answer. For those of you who selected choice D, you did not apply a specific constraint, okay? And I'm going to show you that as well. So let me just go through the solution real quick, and then we'll come over and then we'll look at the method that you guys use to solve the question, because I have an inkling that you guys are simply utilizing the numbers here to solve the question, which is okay, but I'm going to tell you why you need to focus on this process here. So again, I'm applying the same process here. Um, n is equal to 5p plus r. Now, one thing that you will notice is that here the number has changed to 205. Likewise, the number over here has also changed to 5. Now, again, you may say, okay, we are taking up numbers that are leading to our solution. Again, it's a problem-solving question. You need to be able to solve the problem, right? So the test maker is going to give you numbers that are solvable, right? So don't try to think, okay, what if I take some other number to solve the question, right? No, you have to, it is a problem that has a solution. That's why it's a problem solving question. That's why you don't have a choice that says cannot be solved, right? So it is a problem that the test maker creates problems such that whatever information you have, you are able to solve the question in the right manner. Okay, so let's look at this. We have n is equal to 205q plus 6. So similar format of question. What we need to find out is what is the remainder r, and the constraint over here is r is less than 5. So for those of you who selected choice D, right off the bat, this choice is wrong because you have a constraint that r is less than 5. Why is r less than 5? Because your divisor is 5, so your remainder cannot be greater than the divisor. Okay. So 13 of you who selected choice D, that was a mistake that you made. You did not consider the process, the constraint over here. Now let's just solve this over here. N is equal to 205q plus 6, n is equal to 5p plus r. Now can I express 205q in terms of 5p? Absolutely, yes I can. Clearly 205 is divisible by 5, right? Which means that this term is nothing but this term 5p, which means that r is equal to 6. Okay, now I have my remainder as 6, but I know that the remainder cannot be 6 because remainder is less than 5, which means that I need to process this 6 number further, and what I get is that 6 is nothing but 5 times 1 into plus 1, which means that my remainder is 1. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm expressing 6 in terms of this equation over here, right? So now when I divide 6 by 5, what I get is remainder of 1, and that is what my answer is. So now tell me, what is the process that you guys used to solve the question? Did you simply substitute the numbers, or did you do it in this manner? How many of you did the question in the manner as you see on the screen? starting off from the divisibility equation. Good. I'm glad to see that you guys are using the method that is on the screen. Good. All right. So with this, we've come to the end of this session. Sorry, not this session, this section. Now, uh, I want to summarize our learnings from this section here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get you a poll in which I want you to write down what is the feedback that you have that you are taking for yourself from this section. Okay, so let me create the poll. Give me 1 second here. Okay, so now type in what have you learned from this section, from the warm-up section. It could be conceptual learning, it could be process-based learning. What have you learned from this section? What specific aspect about the process? See, because I am going to be sharing these with you. So tell me, what specific aspect about the process have you learned? To utilize a formula for dividends. Okay, good, good. That's a very precise process feedback, process takeaway. Importance of applying concepts rather than assuming numbers, as concepts will help better solve the tougher questions. Absolutely right. Very well said. Thank you for that. Evaluate the intermediate results. Good. Be sure not to skip the minute concepts when solving any level of questions. Good. Stop and think prior to applying. Very nice, very nice. Conceptual learning. Refresh the concepts. Okay. Again, if you could be a little bit more specific, what kind of concepts, that would be good. Now, cool. Thank you so much for your participation here. Now, after the next section as well, I'm going to bring out this poll. Now, what I would recommend is that when you are typing your takeaways for the next section, start off from your response on right now. Okay, so don't so make sure that you put a period you put your cursor at the end of your response so that your initial response does not get overwritten. Okay, so please take care of that. I had learned about negative remainders concept. I could understand it better with basic concept applications. Okay, we will come to negative remainders as well. But again, we'll see how we are building up to that concept by applying, by taking up the first principles from the first principles. So I'm glad that you mentioned that. Okay, so let's end the poll here and hide it. Okay, so now we will get into our little bit difficult questions here, 650 to 700 level, and these are going to be full-length questions. Now, these questions, so far we were dealing with very simple application. Now here also, the application is simple, but there is a bit more processing that is required. But what you're going to see is the theme of this session is you take very simple concept, okay, and then how do what we are demonstrating to you is that how does GMAT take a very simple concept and how does it create questions of varying difficulty levels by twisting certain aspect or by not giving certain information or by putting these constraints and whatnot. Okay, so you will be able to appreciate that, and that is going to give you that level of confidence or that reason for why you need to build your concepts and why you need to have that solid approach. Okay, so here comes the next level of difficulty on these concepts. So here is your question, and let me first get you the right poll here. Um, 5 choices. Can you please click on still solving? Okay, sounds good. Here you go. Okay, last 5 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So the accuracy here is 74%. The correct answer is choice C. So good job there. So let's solve this question, and then after I go through the solution, I will ask you what method you guys used. So again, same concept. We are building upon that same concept. What we need to find out is that what is the remainder when m is divided by 15. So we need to find r. R is less than 15 as per the constraint. What we have been given is m divided by 30 is equal to 8.2. Okay. Now, till now, in the previous section, in the warm-up section, this equation was already in the form of your quotient plus remainder, of your divisor into quotient plus remainder. In this question, however, you have been given m as a product of two numbers. But our goal is to get this equation in the form of our divisor into quotient plus remainder, and then we do the processing of comparing the like terms here so as to get the value of r, right? So what you're seeing is that you need to do a bit more processing for you to get to that same level wherein you have two equations in which you compare the like terms and you get to the answer. Okay, so how can you do this one over here? What you see over here is that m is equal to nothing but 30 into 8 plus 30 into 0.2. So what I have done over here is I have written 8 as 8 plus 0.2, and I now have 30 into 8 into 30 plus 30 into 0.2, right? Now again, my goal is to express one of the terms, right? And my goal is to get m in the form of this equation over here, right? Which means one of the terms should be multiple of 15. Why 15? Because that's what I see over here, right? That's what the divisor is in my required equation, right? So that is what my goal is, and that is what I'm going to do over here. So I visualize, and what I see is that m is equal to 15 times 2 times 8 plus 6. So all I'm doing is from these terms, I'm selecting terms such that I get one term which is a multiple of 15, and then the other term would be left aside. Okay, and that's what I'm able to do here, and I get r as 6. So that's the answer. Now, how many of you solved this question in this manner? Not many of you. So what was the process that you used? Did you solve the question? Did you do m is equal to 13 to 8.2? You got the value of m, and then you got the value of the remainder, and then you divided that by 15. That's most likely what you guys did. Yes. Right. Now, again, you can do that. There's nothing wrong in doing that. But remember, what is our goal? Our goal. So if you guys did that, that means your concepts are in place. But remember what our goal is. Our goal is to be able to solve those 3 DS questions, because those are the kinds of questions that you will need to solve, that you have to build your ability in. So how do you do that? You don't go directly to solve those questions. You build your abilities in solving, you build your process abilities at this stage, at the stage of these 650 level questions, and then you finally get to that level. Okay, so now in this case, the skills that you're building are visualization skills, right? And you have that approach in your mind that if you have 2 equations in which you have those like terms, you can then compare the like terms and you can get to your value. That was the approach that we used for the questions in the warm-up section. Okay? Do you guys see the value of this approach here? Because remember, what we are doing here is we are taking up one concept, one kind of questions really in that concept, because this is the kind of questions in which you need to find the remainders. And then we are building upon that and with a step-by-step method here. Okay. So again, all we are doing over here is we are simply expressing this term 30 into 8.2 in the form of 15p plus r. That's all we are doing. You're just processing it. And for those of you who are not able to get that, this is a skill that you have to build. And as you go through the e-GMAT course, you will find that in our application files, in our practice files, these are the kinds of things that we utilize. You would rarely see us solve a question by simply taking up numbers and going ahead with that, because that process, that approach does not help you solve the difficult questions that you need to be able to solve. Right? And that's the whole reason why you have to start off with the basics and you have to build these skills as you are solving. Okay. All right. So now let's look at question number 2 over here. It's a similar question. It's just that here you had m divided by 30. In this next question, you have m divided by 15. And this minor tweak does something very interesting. And then another thing is, here you have m divided by 30. Okay, so we have kind of flipped the 2 numbers. So let's go ahead, solve the question. Can you please click on still solving? Now in this question, please don't solve by simply doing m is equal to 15 into 8.2. Please don't do that. Solve it using the method that I just explained. Okay, you will take time. That's okay. It's okay to take time on these questions as long as you are building those skills. Okay, so go ahead. Okay, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So good. Almost everyone who marked the answer selected the correct answer. There are few people who selected choices A, B, C, A, B, D, and E. There were some who were not able to solve. So my first question, did you solve it using the method that I have been teaching you, or did you simply, yes? Okay, good, very nice. Are you getting that level of Is your confidence in improving as you're solving these increasingly difficult questions? Yes, no? Good, good. All right. So, again, the same drill. Taking more time, absolutely right. You will take more time when you're solving such questions, utilizing step-by-step process because there are these the process skills that you are still building, right? So it's okay to take time. It's absolutely fine. Okay. Again, the end goal is what you have to keep in mind. So thank you for bringing that up. All right. So again, the same drill, right? I have m is equal to 30p plus r. I need to find the value of r, which means that how do I need, what do I need to do for this part for m is equal to 15 into 8.2? What do I need to do there? Conceptually, what is it that I'm trying to how is it that I'm visualizing m is equal to 15 times 8.2? What is my goal with that equation? What do I need to do? All right, no answers here. What I need to do over here is I need to express m in terms of, absolutely right, two terms. One would be multiple of 30 and the other would be a standalone term, right? To get a number and its remainder. Okay, good. So that's what I do. What I do is, let me get rid of this here. I do m is equal to 15 times 8 plus m is plus 15 times 0.2. So here I'm simply opening up 8, I'm writing 8.2 as 8 plus 0.2 and I'm multiplying it with 15. And now what I do is I collect my like terms. My goal is to bring it in the form of m is equal to 30p plus r. I do just that and what I get is r is equal to 3. Okay, and the correct answer is choice C. So no worries, no problems here. Good that you guys are able to solve this. Now let's come to question number 3 and look, my number has changed slightly. 9.2 is the number instead of previously it was 8.2. Okay. Can I please explain the second visualization? So all I'm doing over here is you have to, again, this is something which you will get with practice. 15 times 8 plus 15 times 0.2. You have to group these terms such that you get 30 times something plus a standalone term, right? So go through that yourself. You have the solution. Again, such things will take time to build. And after we go through this section, I will tell you if you are not able to get to how to do it, I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip that you can apply in order to build this skill. Okay. This is the visualization process skill. Now let's come to question number 3. Go ahead and solve this question. Let's click on still solving, please. All right, go ahead and solve it, please. Okay, last 5 seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So the correct answer here is choice E, which about 67% of the class selected. So let's go through this question. Now this question requires a bit more processing, but it's all along the same lines. So I'm going to walk you through this. So we need to bring these terms in the form of 30, multiple of 30 and a standalone term, right? So that's what we need to do. So what we are doing here is again processing the information. What we get is 15 times 8 plus 15 times 1 plus 3. Now what I do now is I break this 8 up into 2 times 4. Okay. Now I do further processing and I get 30 times 4 plus 15 plus 3. So what I get is 30 times 4 plus 18. So 18 is my remainder. So in this case, what you can see is you have certain more processing that you have to do. Again, the goal over here is to get it in the form of multiple of 30 and a standalone term, right? So you are simply looking at the terms and you're seeing, okay, how can you group terms together such that you get a multiple of 30 and a non-multiple of 30. That's how to do, that is how you need to think about it. Okay, so how many of you solve the question in this manner? Okay, quite a few of you, but there are still some of you who are not getting it. Now, for those of you who are not getting how to do this visualization, understand one thing. I didn't expect that all of you will be able to understand visualization by just solving these 3 questions. Okay, what I want you to do is after this session, when I share the PDF with you, select take up each of these visualization templates, okay, the parts of the solution in which I have done the visualization. Take that up yourself and see, okay, just go through it again. I mean, you will need to spend about half an hour on all these together for you to see, okay, how is it that we are doing it? Okay. And then you solve the official questions related to these concepts. And what we can do is we can give you a list of official questions that actually test these concepts. And then you solve those questions and then you'll be able to see, okay, how is it for you to, how is it that you can apply these skills on those questions. Okay. Now, questions such as, so I see a question, and can you please show a question where 15 into 9.2 doesn't work? I mean, that's not a valid question. The question that you have to understand, what you have to, again, understand the point of why we are doing this. I'm not giving you a scalable method that's going to apply to all the questions of this kind. No, I'm giving you a skill. I'm giving you certain number of questions that can build your visualization skill. Okay, this is a skill that you're building. Okay, and you're trying to see, okay, what is the visualization over here? Given this equation, given this value of m in terms of these, can I express it in terms of this number, this equation here, wherein one is a multiple of 3 and the other is a remainder? Okay, that is what you're doing. Okay, all right, so again, over here, in this case, what we have seen is that how do you how do you process information in progressively increasing difficulty level? So here, the first question was a very straightforward question. All you had to do was group the terms. The second question required a bit more processing. The third question required slightly more processing than the previous question. So you have the slide with you. After the session, take a look at the slide, sit down with it for half an hour, and believe me, if you sit down with it for half an hour, you will be able to get it. Okay. Okay. So it'd help us if we can know the questions where these visualizations are helpful. As I said, GMAT questions require these visualization skills. And as I said, we can put together, so if you send us an email, we can put together the questions in official guide which test these visualizations specifically so that you can get an idea about how to, you can see it for yourself regarding those questions. Okay. Now, when you learn visualization over here, it's not that this visualization would not be applicable to, let's say, another kind of number properties question. It definitely will be. Or let's say another kind of algebra question. It's this, right now we are talking about divisibility and remainders. That's why we are simply working in the realm of just divisibility and remainders. But you will notice as you are building these process skills, the 5 skills that I talked about, these skills are applicable across the board. Okay, and it's just a matter of the way you, it is just a matter of you building that skill on one particular type of questions, and then you'll see that how that skill will be, how you will be a lot more comfortable when you're applying that same skill on certain other questions. Okay. All right. So now let's get into our next section, which is GMAT style questions, 700 level problem solving questions. Now here we are going to be again working on the same concept. Okay. Now we are going to be building upon our understanding of this very concept. So I want you to pay complete attention. We are now into conceptual understanding, back into conceptual understanding. So tell me, what is the remainder when 31 plus 43 is divided by 7? Just solve this question and tell me the answer. The answer is 4. And how did you solve this? You could have either used sequence number 1 or sequence number 2. So tell me, what sequence did you use? Sequence 1 is in which you multiply 31, you add 31 and 43 and you get 74, and then you simply divide that by 7 and you get the remainder. Sequence 2 is in which you divide the individual terms by 7 and then you add the 2 remainders. So either of the 2 sequences is absolutely fine. Okay, it's not that you have to select one sequence over the other. Okay, so either is good. Use your judgment to see which one is better. For example, if 31 and 43 were not 2-digit numbers, let's say they were 5-digit numbers, then in that case, you would see that sequence number 2 is more efficient, because now when you are dividing, you're dividing smaller numbers by 7. If you use sequence number 1 for larger numbers, then you would end up dividing a very large number by 7. Right? So you have to see as to what makes sense for you. Now, let's tweak this a little bit. And now instead of sum of these two numbers, now you have product of these two numbers. Now tell me, what is the answer? The correct answer here is 3. Now, how did you solve this question? Again, we could have used sequence 1 or sequence 2, but in this case, sequence 1 is a lot more laborious. Sequence 2 is the right sequence. You divide the individual terms, and then whatever remainders you get, you multiply the remainders and you get the answer. Now you may ask, okay, how can we add or how can we multiply remainders? For that, what I would tell you is that I'm going to walk you through this slide real quick, okay? And I want you to go to, if you don't follow it right now, it's absolutely fine. I'm not teaching you this. I'm just bringing this to your attention. After the session, sit down with this slide, spend about 10 minutes on this slide and understand this, okay? So all I'm doing is just applying my divisibility equation over here, okay? So I get 31 I'm expressing it as 7 times 4 plus 3, 43 is 7 times 6 plus 1. Okay, so I'm just expressing it again in terms of divisibility equation with divisor as 7, because that is what that is what my concern is. Then I add the two terms, and then I write it in form of our equation, and what you see is that it's simply adding the remainders, adding the individual remainders that I get for the individual terms. The same thing applies for multiplication case as well, and you'll see. So I'm proving why you can add remainders and why you can take product of remainders. That is what I am proving to you. So after the session, please spend some time on this slide as well and do it yourself. Take up a few cases, do it yourself and see, okay, this is how it comes out to be. Okay. So what we have learned so far is you can multiply remainders, you can divide remainders. Now, is everyone clear about this concept? Even if you're not clear about the derivation of it, it's fine. As long as you understand the concept, it's good for now. But after the session, please spend some time on understanding the concept as well, on understanding the proof of the concept as well. All right, so now let's solve this 700 level question and, 700 level question. And I'll get you the poll as well. Can you please click on still solving? All right. Okay, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Okay. So what's the method that you guys used to solve this question? Cyclicity, sequence 2, sequence 1. Okay. 24 is completely divisible by 3. Absolutely right. So in this question, you didn't really need to do anything. Look at the numbers. This question has been added to simply tell you to make certain observations on the on the information given in the question statements before you delve into, solving it using your process. What you're given is, what is the remainder when 24 cube into 38 raised to the power 5 is divided by 3? Look at the numbers here. 24 is completely divisible by 3. So the remainder has to be 0. So the correct answer here is 0. Is this a 700 level question? It is, well, depends on the accuracy of the question. The way you guys responded, it is definitely a 700 level question. Okay, again, what is 700 level question? It is questions in which would not be solved correctly by at least 50% of the students, and that's what we see for this question. Okay, now this is technically not a difficult question. Okay, but again, you guys are making mistakes, right? So again, you have to focus on the right aspects over here. All right. So for those of you who did not look at the numbers, do you guys understand where you faltered? Making observations is another very, very important skill. Look at the numbers, okay, make observations and then decide, because till the time you don't make observations, you would not be able to come up with the kind of process that you need to solve. Okay, so you have to be able to do that. Yes, you're absolutely right. Choice D should be eliminated right away. You're absolutely right. Okay. So again, stick to your basics, conceptual understanding, make observations. All right, so now let's go to our next question. Now this question is a little different. Here you will need to apply the method that you've used. So click on still solving. So I'm kind of giving you a hint already. So please click on still solving and then I'll show you the next question. Go ahead. Okay, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So choice C is the correct answer. And 65% of the class got this question correct. Now here is where we are applying our process. Very, very straightforward. 25. You divide 25 by 3, then you divide 38 by 3, you get the remainder, and then you process your remainders in this manner. The remainder that you get is 8, but you know that the remainder needs to be less than 3, so you express 8 further in terms of your divisibility equation, and then you get the remainder as 2. Now, I'd like to make one more point here. This is definitely a 700 level question, but given that you guys knew the process that you have to apply, you were able to solve this question correctly and within reasonable amount of time. It's not that you took overly excessive amount of time to solve this question. And this is the power of you building your concepts and you having the right approach to solve questions. Okay, you will be able to solve difficult questions with a lot more ease as compared to if you didn't have the right kind of conceptual knowledge, if you didn't have the right kind of approach. Okay, so with this we've come to the end of this section as well. Let's just do a quick overview. Calculations can be simplified extensively. Okay, and this is the again application of this concept. So again, keep that in mind. Now, this is where you have the process skill of simplification. Okay, and it's again as you'll notice, we've talked about process skill of visualization, process skill of constraints. In the way we solve these two questions, questions 4 and 5, you saw the process skill of simplification. Now there are process skills, there are two more process skills. One is translation, the other one is drawing inferences. Now those two, I'll have to see if we do cover those in this session. But again, what you'll see is that that these are the skills that you build as you solve the questions. Okay. Now let's come to negative remainders concept. One of you did mention about negative remainders. Now I'm going to be walking you through this concept, and again, bear in mind, for those of you, because we have people of different levels of abilities in these concepts. For those of you who are not able to follow along as well so far in this session, you will have a little bit of difficulty understanding this one as well. But again, if you spend about half an hour on this slide on your own, you will be able to get it. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Now we'll start off with our same divisibility equation. Okay, now r is always less than the divisor. That's the constraint that we've been working on. And remainder is always greater than or equal to 0. Okay, now the whole point of this slide over here, or whole point of why we are discussing about negative remainders, is that we have to make our calculations easy. So negative remainders concept application is really done so that you can simplify the information that has been given to you to find out the answer. Okay, so let's do that. Um, let's say you have 5 and you're dividing 5 by 2. Remainder here is going to be 1. Okay. Likewise, let's say you have a number 8, you're dividing that by 3, the remainder is going to be 2, right? And you can express in terms of these two, you can express this relationship in terms of your divisibility equation as shown. Now, but how about you wrote this divisibility equation in a slightly different manner? How about you wrote 5 as 2 times 3 minus 1? You're not writing it as 2 times 2, which is 4 plus 1. You're writing it as 2 times 3, 6 minus 1. And how about you wrote 8 as 9 minus 1? That is 3 times 3. Divisor is 3. 3 times 3 minus 1. In this case, what you're seeing is you can definitely do that. And sometimes for ease of processing, we can consider negative remainders. Okay. And I'll show you how to, we'll solve certain questions in which you'll apply the same thing. Okay, now again, this is a very specific, negative remainders is a very specific concept within the divisibility and remainders realm. But what you're seeing over here is that you start off with a very basic concept and how you get to, tweak it a little bit or how you get to process it a little bit in order to make your calculations easy. Okay. And that's where the negative remainders come into picture. Now, we know that remainder cannot be less than 0. So even if you consider negative remainders, you always have to process that remainder such that you get your answer that is greater than or equal to 0. So we have to process this negative remainder. Yes, we can use the negative remainders to simplify our calculations, but before we mark the right answer, we need to process these remainders in terms of positive remainder. Okay, because on the GMAT, remainders are always positive numbers. Okay, so how do we do that? And again, this section may be something which some of you may not understand right away, but again, as I said, go back, look at the slide, spend about 10 to 15 minutes on just this part of the slide and you will be able to get it. So all I'm showing you over here is how do once I work with the negative remainder, what do I need to do to convert it back into a positive remainder? So I'm showing you the derivation of that. What I really need to do is positive remainder is always negative remainder plus the divisor, and that's what I'm showing you how that happens. So I add and subtract the divisor. Nothing is going to happen to my equation if I add and subtract the same number. Now I rearrange the terms. I bring terms 2 times 3 minus 2. So I bring this term over here, okay, because ultimately I want to get a different quotient for this expression. What I get is 2 into 3 minus 1 minus 1 plus 2, and I get 2 times 2 plus 1, right? So all that's happening over here is, and I can do the same thing with this other equation as well. So all that's happening over here is that positive remainder is always equal to negative remainder plus divisor. So for this session right now, so that you can follow the remaining questions, just write this equation down, that if you do consider negative remainders, you always have to bring it back into positive remainder. And how do you do that? You simply add the divisor. But after the session, and I know I'm repeating myself, after the session, please go back and look at this section of the slide. Okay? All right, so now let's apply this concept on question number 6. First of all, are you all clear about this concept, negative remainders? Now, you may ask, okay, why would negative remainders simplify our information? The reason for that is you're dealing with the number 1. Okay, you utilize negative remainders such that you get remainders that are smaller in nature. Preferably, if you would definitely, I mean, if you can express a negative remainder as -1, that's going to simplify your calculations a lot more. Okay, so again, that is what we are aiming at. Again, if it's not -1, then if you bring it down into a smaller number, again, smaller number, processing with smaller numbers is a lot easier than processing with larger numbers. So let's go ahead and apply this on question number 6 now. And let me clear out the polls here. Go ahead, can you please click on still solving? All right, here you go. Last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Good job. I'm really very happy to see that your accuracy for these difficult questions is getting to be high. So that is really good. So this is definitely a 700 level question. It has been characterized, but you know the way you guys are solving it, you're cracking it. So that's good. And again, that's the power of building your skills. Okay, and yeah. Okay, so now let's solve this question real quick here. I have been given this complicated expression and we need to divide it by 3 and find the remainder. Now, tell me very, very truthfully, had you seen this question without going through the process, the content that we went through in this session, would you have been scared of this question? Given that we are dealing with these long, pretty large numbers and you have to find remainder when it's divided by 3, you would have been scared. And thank you for being honest here. But you're not scared right now when you solve this question, you were not scared, right? Because I could see that you could answer this question at a relatively fast pace. It's not that you guys took a whole lot of time to solve the question. Right, you were not scared. So good, good. I'm glad. So good. Now let's just go through how you would solve what we've been to whatever we have been doing. Let's just apply those concepts here. So we are simply breaking it down into smaller chunks, and what you're getting is you are seeing that okay, 24 cubed times 38 to the power 5 plus 17 to the power 7. Again, you make certain observations. The observation that you can make over here is that 24 is completely divisible by 3. So the product of that number, which includes 24, is also going to be divisible by 3. So you take away this term completely. Okay, so this is not going to contribute anything to your remainder. Now what you have is 17 raised to the power 7, which is a pretty large number, right? But you don't have to be concerned about that because you can simplify that information. And how you do that is you take 17, so the remainder 17 to the power 7 divided by remainder of that is going to be simply you calculate the remainder of 7 with 17 and then you raise the remainder to the power 7. That's what you do. And this is where the negative remainder of 1 comes in very handy, because what you have is if you are able to express a certain number in terms of -1 negative remainder, now when it comes to processing the powers, all you have to do is take care of the sign. Okay, and that's what is happening here. You could have utilized another small number 2, but again, raising 2 to the power 7 would have been more calculation intensive. Whereas over here, all you do is you ease your processing, you make your processing a lot easier, and what you get is -1 raised to the power 7, which means -1. Now, you have your final remainder as -1, but that's not your final answer. So choice A would have been automatically wrong. Okay, so what you do over here is you convert it back to a positive remainder, and what you get is -1 plus 3, which is equal to 2. Okay, how do you know if your divisor is 3 or 6? I'm reading the question here. The divisor is 3. It's not 6 here. 3 is the divisor here, and 6 is the quotient here. Okay. how would you solve it if 17 was raised to 8? And again, guys, when you ask me that question, as I said, it's not a solve all thing. As I said, if 17 is raised to the power 8, then also it's the same thing, minus 1 raised to the power 8. In that case, the answer is 1. In that case, you don't have to process it any further. So the remainder would have been 1. Okay. Y was plus 3 done to 1. This is again the concept that we learned in the previous slide, wherein you have to convert your negative remainder back into your positive remainder. And the way to do that is you add your divisor back to the negative remainder. And the proof of that is presented to you in the previous slide. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to our next question here. Question number 7. Now your divisor is 6. You have similar term, but your divisor is 6. And now can you please click on still solving? Now, one more thing that I would recommend to you is that if you're asking a question which I've already gone through, the solution of which I've already gone through, please put your question in the Q&A part so that Ashutosh can address that question. Okay. All right. Okay. Last 10 seconds. I'm going to end the poll now. Amazing accuracy. Very nice. Okay, so I'm going to just breeze through this. Again, exactly same application here. You negative remainders comes in very handy. The answer is 5 over here. So good. All right now. So let's get to our overview of question 6 and 7. It's okay to process negative remainders because these can simplify your calculations, but it's important to convert negative remainders to positive remainders. Okay, so now let's get into our, again, that's the process skill of simplification. Now, one thing that I will tell you guys is that if you're feeling that these questions are easy, that's because you have worked towards these questions. You've worked towards building your ability to be able to solve such questions. Okay. Now, when we get into, and that's the power of building the right kind of conceptual understanding. That's the power of building your process skills. Okay. These questions are difficult. These are 700 level questions. The ones which I'm telling you are 700 level questions, they are truly 700 level questions. Okay. Even the question in which the remainder was 0 because 24 was completely divisible by 3, even that question is a difficult question because of just the whole complexity of the large numbers. Okay. So keep in mind that you're building your concepts, you're building your process skills. That's why you're able to solve these questions correctly. The other thing is some of these questions are interlinked. You don't have to do a whole lot of processing because the processing has been done in the previous question as well, right? So again, that's another thing. You're a lot more comfortable with the numbers here because you've already looked at and processed those numbers up front. Okay, so now let's come back to questions 8 through 10. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a chance to solve each of these questions again. And I want to see if you change your responses to any of these questions. So here is what I am going to show you for question number 8. Oh, I apologize for that. For question number 8, a number of you selected choice. Okay, so it's okay. You guys can solve it from scratch now. So click on still solving and think about applying all the stuff that we have learned so far in this session. Okay. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So right now, 57% of you have selected choice A. Last time when you guys did up front, you guys only 27% of you had selected choice A. Then there were 41% of you who selected choice C, and then there were quite a few of you who selected choice E, and then choice D was selected by 4.5% of you. Now you can see that 57% of you have selected choice A, which means there's a tremendous improvement in how you've approached this question. Do you guys, people who selected choice A, and I'll talk about people who didn't select choice A as well, but for those of you who selected choice A, do you guys see that you have improved in your ability here? That you were a lot more confident here? Tell me what changed. Because guys, this is the crux of this session. You solve these questions up front, then you work towards building your concepts and building your process. And then you solve this question again. Okay, so what changed? Understanding of concept, process and methodology, clarity, visualization following the process. Now remember, if you do this, and we're going to see similar theme apply in questions 9 and 10 as well. Just imagine this is just divisibility and remainders concept. Just imagine if you do this across the entire span of GMAT Quant. And that's what the e-GMAT course will enable you to do. Teach you the concept, teach you concepts in progressively increasing difficulty, okay? And then teach you the process. And then you'll be able to solve such questions with such ease. Okay, so now let's go through the solution. And again, you'll notice that the solution is relatively straightforward. We have to find the remainder when p is divided by m and m is greater than 1. That's given to us. So statement 1 is p is equal to m plus 1 raised to the power 8. Now I can apply my concept here, that the concept that I've learned, that if I I can simplify my calculations by taking the power out. So I calculate the remainder when m plus 1 is divided by m, and then I raise that remainder to the power 8. Now if I simply make observations here, so this over here is applying the concept. This over here is applying is making observations. M plus 1 raised to the power divided by m is going to give you a remainder of 1. 1 raised to the power 8 is 1, and that's your answer. Okay, so you can solve this question by simply from statement 1. You can answer this question from statement 1. So now your potential choices are choices A and D. Okay, now for those of you who selected choice C, where did you falter? You clearly thought that statement 1 was not sufficient. My guess is that you did not process the information in this manner. You simply saw that there are two variables, and that is why you would not be able to answer the question, because you don't have the two, you don't have values. Did not notice that m is greater than 1. Okay, all right. Okay, so now let's look at choice statement 2. Statement 2 says m is equal to 8. Now m is equal to 8, but I have no idea about what is p, so statement 2 cannot be sufficient. But for those of you who did select choice 2, just choice C, you would have thought that, okay, you get 8 from statement 2. Now statement 1 has p is equal to m plus 1 raised to the power 8. So you can calculate the value of p and you can find the answer. Okay. So that is where you faltered. All right. Now, again, my request to you, if you are asking questions that are not related to what we are talking about, please put those questions in the Q&A part so that Sandeep and or Ashutosh can respond to your question. So the answer is we do provide question banks. So Scholaranium, and there are upwards of 1,000 questions in Scholaranium alone, plus another, I would say 500 some questions in the course itself. Okay, so statement 2, is not sufficient, which means that the correct answer is choice A. Okay, now let's move on to question number 9. Again, this is where you would apply the process once more. So can you please click on still solving? You guys know the drill now. Okay, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll here. Now, I'll say one thing, that things didn't improve a whole lot for this question, but that's okay because there is something more that needs to be done in this question, and something that we haven't really discussed so far, because this aspect is really very specific to a DS question, but all kinds of DS questions, not just divisibility and remainders. So so now let's look at why did you falter, because in terms of your comparison with the previous set, still about 34% of you selected choice A at that time, about 22%. So nothing actually moved in this case. So which is okay. Yeah. So let's see where you faltered. Now with DS questions, okay. So tell me one thing. With after you read the question statement, what was your analysis, or before you went into looking at statement 1, what did you understand from the question statement? What is the question really asking you? So essentially what my question to you is, what was your processing? What did your processing of question statement result in? 39 minus 1. Okay. Okay. And I think that is where the problem is. Some of you who are saying is n even or odd, you guys are absolutely right. But those of you who are processing 38 as 39 minus 1, you guys, or 26 plus 12, you guys did not process it in the right manner. Okay, but that's okay. As I said, this is really a question in which there is this process skill with regards to data sufficiency, in that you take up question statement and you analyze it till the time you cannot simplify it further. Okay, and then only you move on to your individual statements. So essentially what the question needs us to find out is that 30, what is the remainder when this complicated looking number is divided by 13? So you process it. Okay, this number is divided by 13, that's the remainder. So I can apply my conceptual understanding and I can simply divide 38 by 13, get the remainder, and then raise that to the power n squared. That's my conceptual understanding, right? Now what I have is 38 is equal to 13 times 3 minus 1. 38 is equal to 13 times 2 plus 12. Now clearly applying the negative remainder is going to be a lot more straightforward for me. That's what I apply, minus 1 raised to the power n squared. Now I don't know if the remainder is 1. So there are two possible cases. Either remainder is 1 or remainder is minus 1. Now, when will the remainder be 1? If n is odd. Because if n is odd, in that case, the remainder is going to be, so either when I say remainder is minus 1, obviously you need to process it further and you need to get the positive remainder, 12. But in either case, the remainder is, you get two possible values of remainder. And so essentially what you need to find out is if n is odd or even. Okay, that is what you need to find out. Okay, now with this information, we go further into the statement 1 analysis. So if you think about it, what has happened over here is your processing of negative remainders and divisibility equation needs to be done on the question statement, so that ultimately all the question statement is asking you to do is find out if n is even or odd. Now, if this were an easy question, the question statement itself would have said is n even or odd. But this is not an easy question. This is a 700 level question, 700 plus level question. That means that the test maker wants you to do this level of processing so that you get to the simplified question statement that simply asks you to find out if n is even or odd. Okay, so again, the whole point of me telling you all this is getting you into the psyche of the test maker is that you understand how your conceptual understanding and your process understanding helps you in solving such questions. Okay. All right, so now let's look at statement 1. Statement 1 says n leaves no remainder when divided by 4. And from that aspect, it's very clear that n is an even number, right? So you have your answer. So statement 1 is sufficient, right? Now let's look at statement 2. Statement 2 says square root of n is only divisible by 1 and itself. Now all this is saying is that square root of n is a prime number, which means that n is square of a prime number. Now you have prime numbers which are odd primarily, except for one prime number which is 2, and that's even. So you don't have enough information to be able to determine whether n is even or odd, which means that the correct answer is choice A. Now, for those of you who selected choice A, did you select it for the right reasons? By that, what I mean is, did you do the processing the way we have done the processing? Because if the answer to that is yes, then yes, definitely give yourself credit for answering this question correctly. Now, for those of you who did not select choice A, where did you falter? Tell me, you forgot 2. Okay, you forgot 2 for statement in statement 2, that 2 is an even number. Again, as we were talking, this aspect is covered in detail in the concept files in number properties course. In the live session, we actually emphasize on this property a whole lot because this property is tested so much on DS questions. Okay. Okay. All right, so as long as you guys understand where you faltered, it's good. Again, the whole point of doing this is that you understand what your gaps are and you understand the right method of preparation. Okay, so now let's look at our last question in this session, and that's question number 10. So clear out. Can you click on still solving, please? All right, go ahead and solve the question. Okay, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Now, this question has seen a tremendous improvement. When you guys solved this question last time around, only 15% of you selected choice D as the correct answer. A number of you selected, 22% of you selected choice A as the correct answer. Then 40% of you selected choice C as the correct answer. But now I can see that there's only one person who selected choice C, and more than half of the class selected choice D as the correct answer, which was only 15% last time around. So there is an improvement, and I'd like to know from you, do you feel that you have a more solid handle on these questions, on this question specifically? Yes or no? Again, it's a DS question. It is bound to be this one is bound is definitely a difficult one, and we'll go through the solution. But just looking at the stats here, I can tell that there is an improvement, considerable improvement in the confidence of some of you over here. So let's go through this. We need to first understand the question statement. The question statement is asking us to find the remainder when 4m is divided by 16. So essentially all we have to do here is process it in terms of our divisibility equation, and what we get the constraints that r is less than or equal to 15, or and r is greater than or equal to 0. So now let's do statement 1 analysis. There isn't much that we can do from the question statement. Statement 1 analysis. M leaves a remainder of 4 when divided by 32 raised to the power 32. Now, pretty large numbers. So that's okay. We are not going to get scared of these large numbers. We get M is equal to 32 raised to the power 32k plus 4. Now, remember again your visualization skills. We have to find out the value of R. So it makes sense. What we do is we compare, and now you have this equation, and you have this equation. So what we are doing is we are bringing this equation in the form of this equation over here, so that we can compare the like terms and we can get the value of R. Okay, so we multiply both sides by 4 and we basically get this. Okay, now you have to do processing so that your goal is to bring one term that is a multiple of 16, and such that the remainder of the terms can constitute your remainder R. Okay, that is what your goal is, and that's what you've been doing in all of the questions in this session, right? So we are doing that processing. Now again, for those of you who are not able to follow along this processing, it's okay. Take a look at this slide after the session. Spend 5 minutes on this slide. Okay, so ultimately what I get is I am able to express this entire term in terms of, basically all the terms in this one come out to be a multiple of 16. Okay, and that's why we are able to get the remainder as 0. Okay, I have a question. Why not divide the 4m equation by 4? You can divide that, but again, now you'll get remainder by 4. Again, you have to visualize the two equations, and you have to see what processing can help you simplify what kind of processing you do such that it can help you simplify your solution. Okay, it makes perfect sense to leave remainder R as is, such that what you are doing is you're getting this equation in the form such that you get one term that is a multiple of 16 and the remaining terms that are not multiple of 16. Okay, and again, this is a process skill of visualization, which is something that you need to build upon. So choice A is sufficient. So for those of you who selected choice A and D, you guys did well. So again, number of you were able to do this statement analysis correctly. Now let's look at statement 2. M cube is divisible by 16. Now this statement is a bit complex. I would give that to you. Okay. There is this high level of thinking that is required here, which is something that you get through the application files and through the practice files throughout the course. So you will be able to develop this high level of thinking very easily if you go through the course properly. So here m raised to the power, so what you're given is m cube is divisible by 16, which means that what you can say is that 2 is definitely a factor of m. Okay, you can definitely say that, right? Now, you have specific information about m cube. So let's cube both the sides. So now what you get is that m cube is equal to 2 raised to the power 3a times all these other prime factors. Now you know that 2 to the power 4 is 16, and that's the divisible, that's your divisor in this case, which means that if you were to now say, which means that there should be this 3a should be at least 4, right? If this statement is to be true, m cube is divisible by 16, this means that 3a has to be at least 4. Okay, so and now you carry further, which means that a has to be greater than or equal to 4 by 3, which means that the minimum value of a, because a is a power, which means that it needs to be an integer, the minimum value of a is 2. Okay, now you put 2 and 2 together. What you see is that m is 2 squared something. Okay, which means that now over here you have 4m. Now if you multiply both sides by 4, what you get is 4m is equal to 4 into 2 squared something, which means nothing but 4m is equal to 16q. You're converting this something into 16q, into q, which means that r is 0. Your remainder is 0. Okay. Now, how many of you are clear with this processing? First of all, how many of you were able to process it in this manner? People who selected choice D, did you select it by after processing it in this manner? No. Okay. How did you process this information to select, to confirm that choice, that statement 2 is sufficient? Tell me, how did you process it? Okay, so not many of you solved it in this manner. Okay, so you just picked M as 4, took examples of M. Now, again, you can take examples, but again, that's going to make your processing a bit more difficult. I always like to solve applying the basic principles. So m cube is divisible by 16. So I always start off with, okay, how can I process this information? Because ultimately what it is that I'm getting at, I need to find the value of, I need to get some information about what m is, right? So I'm trying to do it that way. So m cube is equal to 16k. How do we solve it by this? Um, Again, this is the method that I use and I find it very comfortable. It's based on very close, it's based on basic principles. Again, whenever you're dealing with even numbers, it always makes sense to consider 2 as your prime factor, and consider and put your constraints on that. And that's what we did over here. Because the divisibility was given by 16, you know that 16, so 16 is 2 to the power 4, and that's the principle that we are utilizing over here, and again we are applying the process from that standpoint. Okay, so again, as I said, this was a bit more complex processing that was required over here, and this is something which you will definitely learn as you go through the files in the course. Okay, but ultimately the main thing is if you guys focus on on question number if you focus on the the way we did processing for statement number one, you will see how if you have solid conceptual understanding, if you have solid understanding of the process, how you can figure out to solve the question. Okay. Okay, I see that some of you have doubts about why we have assumed m the way we have done it. And I know that some of you are considering m cube is equal to 16k and why that's giving the wrong answer. Please put your questions in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can respond to you over there. Okay? All right. So Ashutosh, if you can take the take some of the questions from. So all of you, please, whoever have doubts, please put in your question over here in the Q&A pod so that Ashutosh can respond to them. Okay. All right. So with this, we've come to the last part of this session now, which is the concluding remarks. GMAT Quant can be mastered very easily. Okay, it's not about complex math, it's about building some core skills and good habits, reading the questions correctly, writing things down. It's not about finding the quickest way to solve questions. Okay, so that is something which you need to understand. So at this point in time, I want to share certain success stories with you, and I want to bring about the aspects the things that successful students have focused on. This first success story is for people who think they are good in GMAT Quant. And you can read Krish's debrief on GMAT Club. Krish had always done well in Quant, but he was stumped by the GMAT. He constantly faltered while answering GMAT questions, falling in familiar traps. Frustrated with the lack of progress, he decided to change his approach and he started following a methodical approach, even changing the way he would solve DS questions significantly. And after making these changes, he was able to improve his quant score to Q51, which is the highest possible, scoring a 740. So, really, things that he did was that he organized the information better and he understood that, okay, simplification and applying those basic concepts is the key to solving such questions. Now, here's a South American person, Leonardo, and he is someone who was not an excellent person in GMAT Quant, and he was stuck at Q45 despite trying really hard. He needed a high score in Quant because he wanted to apply to finance focused schools such as NYU, Wharton, as well as schools such as Stepper. Now, to improve beyond Q45, Leo adopted a methodical approach. He started consciously focusing on constraints, showing his work on paper. Once he had the approach right, he made an extensive use of analytics that Quant Scholarinium provides to isolate the areas that he needed to improve upon. He then used the custom quizzing feature to ensure that he had actually improved. And because of his decent quant score and excellent verbal score, Leo was admitted to Wharton, Stern, and Tepper. And that is the power of doing things right when you're preparing for the GMAT. Ultimately, your goal is to get to that target school of yours, that dream school of yours. Okay. And for you to be able to accomplish that goal, it makes sense for you to give everything that you've got to this GMAT exam, right? And that's why it's very important for you to prepare in the right manner. Now, this third success story is of an individual who was actually extremely weak in quant. His starting score was Q30, a mere 20 percentile. Mazibar, which is his BTG forum name, spent a ton of time reading quant books but was not able to improve. Now, he benefited tremendously from the progressive learning architecture at e-GMAT, in which he was able to cement his basics before taking on difficult questions. Pretty much what we did in this session, we took easy questions first, we built our approach, and then we moved on to more difficult questions. Okay. In his case, where his basics were not strong enough, he was given appropriate feedback from the system. Now, because of quizzes that are built into each file, he was able to leverage data to help him. Mazibar was able to score Q45, which is 59th percentile, and this was a huge improvement over his starting score. So the thing to notice is that regardless of your current level in quant, the common theme is building your conceptual understanding, building the right kind of process. Okay. Now let's take up this last success story. And this is an amazing story of an individual who had an extremely strong determination to study at top B schools. Now he started at Q38, which coincidentally is 38th percentile on GMAT Quant. He realized that he needed a stellar quant score to get an admit from Wharton and GSB Chicago, and the only way to improve from such a low score was to truly focus on learning, which he did using the video lessons. He was short on time, so he used analytics and quant scholaranium to isolate the areas where he needed most help. And like Leonardo, he used the custom quizzing feature to ensure that he gained mastery in all these concepts. Right? So at Q38, Wharton seemed a distant dream, but he had received an interview invite and possibly admission from Wharton. So again, that's the power of you making sure that you focus on the right aspects. You build good habits. You take care of the conceptual aspects on the GMAT. You are methodical, wherein you're applying, you're building your process skills, utilizing the course. You're methodical, wherein you can pinpoint where you're making mistakes by utilizing the detailed solutions that are there in the course. Okay. As next steps, what I would recommend is make sure that you go through this presentation. I will be sharing the PDF of this presentation with you. Trust the test maker. That's very, very important. He's not going to throw anything at you that you cannot solve. Okay, that's something which is very, very important. And believe in your skills. You have everything in your arsenal to be able to solve questions. Okay. Now, for all the e-GMAT students, I would strongly recommend that you go through this PDF once again, and then you go through the remaining practice files in divisibility and remainder section, and then you proceed further. For those of you who are as yet not e-GMAT students, for your next steps, I would say go through all the number properties concept files in the free trial. Solve the practice questions that I'm going to share in this PDF, and definitely utilize the free trial of Scholaranium to solve number properties questions. Again, as you're solving questions, you need to make sure that you ask yourself, did you solve the question in the right manner? Go through the solution really very intently, and make sure that you understand each and every step in the solution. All right, so with this, we've come to the end of the second part of the webinar as well. Now I'm going to invite Rajat back into the session so that he can take any of your other questions. Please put your questions in the Q&A pod over here. And while I do that, while I bring about the presentation to share, let me also bring about these polls that I've just give me 1 second here. I want you to put in your rating for the session, and I'd want you to also put in what did you put in your comments, your feedback, and your learnings from the session over here. All right, and in the meanwhile, if you can post any of your other questions in the Q&A pod, that would be good. All right then. For e-GMAT students, shall we start Scholaranium after completing entire quant or topic wise? I would say you finish up number properties and then you should go through Scholaranium. Okay, so finish up a course in your account, and then look at Scholaranium. Make sure that you get to your target ability. Then let's say start with algebra, finish that up, and then go through Scholaranium. Okay, good. All right. All right, then let me invite Rajat back into the session if you have any questions. And thank you very much. Again, GMAT Quant is really very straightforward as long as you approach it in the right manner. Okay, so I really appreciate your feedback over here. So it's really good to know when people are able to get the point that we set out to accomplish. So thank you so much for your feedback here. All right, I wish you all the very best.
All right, guys, we are now in the last part of the webinar. Let me actually share the PDF with you. There's the PDF. And let me also share the batch calendars with you. Here are the batch calendars as well. Remember, we started the batch yesterday. Okay, I have a couple of questions here, good questions. Abhijit asks, for e-GMAT students, shall we start scholarly name after completing the entire quant course or topic-wise? Short answer, Abhijit, topic-wise. So when you go through number properties, after that, take a number properties ability quiz, take a couple of custom quizzes, look at the areas that you still need to work on, and then fix those. Similarly, as you go through algebra or word problems and so on and so forth. Okay, Tigui says, can you suggest a methodology for people who with very basic math skills? So again, I'd say start with the course, start with number properties, then go towards word problems. And in our courses, start with the very basics. And if you need something which is even more basic, then do let us know. But essentially, if you are someone who has a graduate, who has an undergrad degree, or what we call as bachelor's degree, then I think you should have all the skills that you need. Chiranjan says, can you please explain the entire teaching methodology? If I enroll the number of live classes, number of recording classes. Again, Chiranjan, I'll give it to you. I'll tell you something in a few words, but I'm also going to refer you to two other areas. You can look at our courses, course description, and that can help you with that. Let me just go and share the description with you. This is our online courses, and then also you can schedule a call with one of our strategy experts. But essentially, the way I would recommend that so in terms of our methodology, we first build a foundation, we evaluate you on the foundation, then we teach you one concept, evaluate you on the concept, and so on and so forth. And then we teach you application, evaluate you on the application, then we go to the next set of concepts. So for example, in number properties, you would start with even and odd, which is kind of the very foundation. Let's see if I have something which is out there that I can share. Okay. So number properties, we'll start with even odd, then we'll go with prime numbers, then with units, digits. So this is what we call as a module structure, and let me see if I can zoom it in. So you can see the even odds module, which is module 1, module 2 is primes, module 3 is units digit, 4 is LCM. Then you have an assessment. Then I don't know where module 6 went, but there's a module 6 as well. Then you have divisibility and remainders and stats, and then you have another set of assessments overall. So that's kind of how the course structure is. In every module, what you have, let me just put in over here and see if I can draw. In every module, you start with the concepts. We teach you how to apply the concepts. You practice the concept. Now remember, there are quizzes here, here, and here as well. Then you teach the next concept, learn how to apply. Then there's a practice quiz over here as well. And again, then you have a set of official questions. So I mean, just in this, it's just divisibility. Remainders is similar, and so on and so forth. So our methodology is we first teach you the content, then we evaluate you on it, then we teach you how to apply the concept, evaluate you on it again, and so on and so forth. And this is the manner in which we do everything. How many full-length mock tests? We offer you 5 full-length mock tests. In addition to that, we also offer 30 tests in ability quizzes in quant and another 30 in verbal. And in addition to that, we also offer GMAT club tests, which is equivalent to about another 15 mock tests or so. So essentially, if you look at the number of questions that you get, including which is purely in our practice platform, not in our learning platform, you'd get questions which are equivalent to upwards of 20 odd mock tests. But again, one thing that I want to emphasize is acing the GMAT is not about taking mocks. This is not CAT. Remember that. GMAT's a very different exam from CAT. So acing the GMAT is about learning the concepts. It's about making sure you learn how to apply the concepts, because unlike CAT, where each question carries the identical number of marks, on the GMAT, difficult questions carry 3 times as many points as easy questions do. Batch calendar, yes, we'd be happy to do that. You can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. Yes, for those of you who who are joining through a tablet or a phone, you probably won't be able to download the files. Again, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat, and we'd be happy to send over the batch calendars. Can you buy just Colranium Access? No, we don't sell Colranium as a standalone product. It's very closely integrated with with our courses, so it just doesn't make sense to do that. Okay, another question. Uh, do instructors answer questions in the live sessions that are there? Yes, as you go into paid sessions, the interaction is a lot more than what you see in a free session. So this is a free session. 60% of the students in a free session are not prepared. In a paid session, every student who comes is really, really well prepared. And essentially, the session is a lot more interactive, where we focus on where you're faltering, why you're faltering. The feedback given is a lot more personalized. Also, instructors do stick around after the session. If you have questions, if you have doubts, they do address those doubts as well. So, I mean, that's why you have 4 of the world's top 5 rated instructors on GMAT Club working at e-GMAT. These people work full time. They make sure and we make sure that their salary is aligned with the success of our students. Are there only weekend classes? Yes, because you go through the online course during the week. So most people who take the GMAT are working professionals, and they can study for a couple of hours during the week, and that's what they do during a couple of hours per day during the week, and that's what they do. They go through the online course, they make sure they do the pre-work, and then after that, on the weekend, they attend the live sessions. Again, if you have questions about how this entire program works, you can always schedule a call, and we'll be happy to walk you through it. With that, I want to thank everyone for attending the session today. Uh, Faisal says, are there one-on-one sessions with private tutors? No, there are no one-on-one sessions with private tutors. No. A typical private tutoring on the GMAT costs about $200 an hour. And if you want to pay that, we can schedule a one-on-one session with the private tutor. That's kind of what a good GMAT tutor costs. But the architecture is designed so that you get feedback that you'd get from a private tutor. The solutions are designed to a level of detail that even private tutors won't provide. I mean, you saw some of that methodically over here, and the reason uh, uh, we do that is because of the volume of students that we deal with. We deal with about 10,000 students every year, and so a typical time that we put in to create one quant solution is about an hour and a half. And the reason we put that amount of detail is because, when you average it out over 10,000 students, it delivers the extent of benefit that that's really profitable for us to do, where you say, hey, if 10,000 students go through the solution, they get it, then essentially, the score improvements that we see they're tremendous. So take a look at the free trial. Take a look at the quality of the content that you see, the amount of detail and the amount of learning. But one thing that I would really say is go through the free trial with a focused mindset, where you're there to learn. Another piece, which as you look at any other piece of material that's not from e-GMAT, that you typically see tricks over there. We don't teach you tricks because they don't work on the GMAT. GMAT's not a test of tricks, unlike some of the other exams that you've seen. It's a test of impactful application of concepts, which is what you saw in this webinar. And that's something that you're going to see in the free trial as well. Okay, guys, with that, I want to thank everyone for attending the webinar. I know, depending on the part of the world that you're joining from, it could be fairly late. And if you are from the States like we are in, it's for some of you, it's fairly early in your morning. So thank everyone for taking that time out and spending that time with us. Your participation made this session really enjoyable. With that, good luck for your GMAT preparation, and then continue to work hard and get closer to that target GMAT score.